Hello, I'm Helen, and I recently celebrated my 30th birthday. Years ago, I made the naive decision to marry a man burdened with various issues, believing that my love could solve them all. I thought I could help him recognize his own worth, but love has its limitations and cannot force someone to love themselves. I'll refer to my ex-husband as Scott. He had an overwhelming need to please his parents, a drive that extended far beyond a normal desire for their approval. His life revolved around this compulsive craving for validation, and it was painful to witness. Scott's parents, whom I'll call Mr. and Mrs. Kyle, appeared indifferent to his achievements, which only fueled his desperation for their attention. I quickly realized that I couldn't fill the emotional void they left in him. To make matters worse, Scott often drained our savings by purchasing extravagant gifts and planning lavish vacations for his parents, who hardly seemed to appreciate them. This reckless spending created constant conflict between us, and I often felt like I was competing for his attention. Despite the numerous challenges and endless arguments, I still cared deeply for Scott. I clung to the hope that he might break free from his parents' unrealistic expectations and discover true happiness within himself. Eventually, it became painfully clear that my love alone couldn't shield Scott from the negative influences of his parents. One day, he approached me with a serious expression, signaling that he had something significant to discuss. Given the tumultuous nature of our relationship, I braced myself for a potentially intense disagreement. "Helen, there's something important we need to talk about," he began, his tone grave. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart sinking with the anticipation of bad news. "It's about my parents. They're retiring soon, and I want to surprise them with a luxury vacation. It's going to be quite expensive," he revealed, a mix of excitement and anxiety etched on his face. "That sounds nice, but as long as the money comes from your personal savings." "I really don't want to dip into our joint savings again," I replied, hoping to steer clear of another financial argument. "I have enough to cover it on my own." "I was hoping we could use some of our savings," Scott admitted, his expression torn between hope and concern. "Scott, if it's more than we can afford, maybe we should reconsider this expense," I suggested gently, trying to ground him in reality. But my words only upset him. "You just don't understand, Helen. I love my parents and want to do something special for them. Love isn't about counting every penny, it's about grand gestures," he argued passionately. I countered, "But love is also about being there for each other and making sacrifices together, not at the expense of our financial stability. This trip might mean a lot to them, but we need to think about our future too." Scott remained resolute. "I have to do this for them. I thought you of all people would understand. They mean everything to me." "And you mean everything to me, Scott, but we have to be practical. We can't just use all our savings on one trip." I tried to find a middle ground, but instead, Scott accused me of being selfish, unable to see the significance of his gesture. "It's not about being selfish. It's about being sensible and planning for our future," I explained, my anxiety escalating as he mentioned meeting all of our savings. "All of our savings, Scott? That's just reckless," I exclaimed, stunned by his request. "You're being heartless," he shot back, convinced I couldn't understand his desire to make his parents happy. "No, Scott, I'm being realistic," I replied, feeling the gap between us widen with every word. "We can't afford to spend $35,000 on a whim." My patience was wearing thin, and his casual assumption that we could just recoup the money later only deepened my irritation. "Really, Scott? That's not how this works." My disbelief was palpable. We were at an impasse, our views on love, responsibility, and finances standing worlds apart. The argument escalated, voices raised, and in the heat of the moment, objects were hurled and shattered around us, our frustration spilling over. Then Scott dropped a bombshell. He declared that if I couldn't support him, he wanted a divorce. He probably expected me to panic, to desperately try to save our marriage, but instead, I found my calm and resolve. "Okay, Scott, if that's truly what you want," I said, surprise washing over him. He had anticipated tears and pleas, but my unwavering stance caught him off guard. I was done catering to his fantasies. If he chose to squander his future on unattainable dreams, he would do so alone. I held nothing back, making my thoughts clear. His relentless pursuit of his parents' approval was futile, like trying to stay dry in a storm with just an umbrella. He attempted to counter, but I silenced him with a simple raise of my hand, refusing to continue fighting for a love shackled by unrealistic expectations and a constant need for validation. "Go ahead, spend all your money trying to win over people who barely notice you," I told him, resolute in my decision to break the cycle of disappointment and broken promises. In that moment, the stark reality hit him. Our marriage had become a battlefield, and it was time for both of us to seek peace separately. A month has passed since our divorce was finalized, and I can honestly say the sense of liberation is profound. Gone are the exhausting arguments over finances and the futile quest for approval that was never ours to claim. Now, I finally feel free. I breathe easier now, liberated from the oppressive weight of Scott's insecurities that once clouded my days. Each new day shines a little brighter. Though Scott has tried to re-enter my life, feigning concern and checking in on my well-being, I see through his charade. I refuse to be deceived again. As the old saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. With resolve, I turned away from his attempts to rekindle our past relationship. I realized I had invested too much energy trying to fix someone who didn't want to change. It was time to prioritize my own growth and happiness. Rebuilding my life hasn't been easy. Dividing our shared assets and adapting to a new financial reality required patience and resilience. While I was used to a certain lifestyle, I embraced the challenge of reshaping my life. As I embarked on this journey of self-discovery, I uncovered a strength and independence I never knew I had. Reconnecting with old friends, resuming hobbies I had set aside, and exploring new interests opened up a world filled with possibilities. I was determined to seize this fresh start. Yes, there were moments of self-doubt and loneliness, and adjusting to a tighter budget was tough. The scars from a failed marriage don't vanish overnight. Yet with each passing day, I found solace in knowing that I was no longer compromising my happiness to accommodate someone else's insecurities. The relative ease with which I moved forward was perhaps a reflection of how long I had clung to a doomed relationship. It was astonishing to see how much I could achieve once I was free from that emotional burden. A month into this new chapter, I felt a sense of renewal, ready to embrace whatever came next. I was still adjusting, but I felt more empowered than ever amidst this transformation. Scott's messages began to change. He claimed he was in danger and urgently needed to meet. Weary of his relentless attempts to reach out, I decided it was time to address the situation head-on. "Scott, we've been through this. We're divorced. It's time for us to move on," I said firmly. "Please, Helen, I just need a moment to explain. I'm in serious trouble, and you're the only one I can turn to for help," he implored, his voice tinged with what seemed like genuine fear. Perhaps it was just the absence of hearing him that made it sound so urgent. Despite my reservations, I felt a flicker of intrigue mixed with caution. "Fine, but we're not meeting at my place. Let's go to that cafe we used to frequent. No tricks, understood?" "Thank you, Helen. I promise I just need someone to listen." "You're the only one who understands me," he replied, relief evident in his tone. "You might wonder why I agreed to meet him after everything that had happened. Truthfully, I questioned my own decision. Sometimes curiosity and a lingering concern, no matter how faint, compel us to act against our better judgment. I couldn't entirely dismiss his plea. Divorce or not, a part of me still cared. So there we were, sitting across from each other in the cozy cafe, enveloped in the comforting aroma of coffee. Yet not even the familiar, soothing environment could ease the tension. Watching Scott, with anxiety etched across his face and those deliberately sad eyes attempting to tug at my heartstrings, was almost comical. This time, though, I remained unmoved. Leaning back, composed and in control, I was prepared to listen but determined to steer the conversation on my terms. "Okay, Scott, you have my attention for now. What's this danger you're supposedly in? Just so you know, I'm not here to save you. I'm done cleaning up your messes." I spoke with a tone that was firm yet open to hearing him out. Scott sighed deeply, his face a mix of regret and desperation that almost stirred pity in me. But I steeled myself against any emotional manipulation. "I know I've made mistakes before, Helen, but this situation is different. I've gotten involved with some seriously bad people. I owe them a lot of money, and they're not known for their patience," he confessed. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical of his melodramatic tale. "Really, Scott? Dangerous people? Are we revisiting the story of your imaginary friends who always seem to attract trouble?" I couldn't hide my disbelief. Scott's expression shifted to one of hurt and frustration, evidently hoping for a more sympathetic response. "No, Helen, this isn't made up. I'm in deep trouble, and coming to you is my last resort," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Let me guess, you spiraled after our divorce," I replied, piecing together the predictable pattern of his post-separation choices. As Scott shared his predicament, my voice unintentionally rose, drawing the attention of other cafe patrons. I shot them an apologetic look, trying to regain my composure. Look, I got caught up in something foolish, I admit, but now I'm in a mess that's bigger than I can handle alone, he confessed, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. My frustration was close to boiling over. How could he waltz back into my life with yet another crisis? Beneath my irritation, though, a faint shadow of empathy lingered. How much are you in for? I asked, bracing myself for the answer. $120,000, Scott responded sheepishly. $120,000. Are you out of your mind? My outburst was louder this time, drawing sharp glances from around the cafe. I didn't bother to apologize. Anyone overhearing our conversation would likely understand my reaction. Please, Helen, I'm begging you. I've got nowhere else to turn. I know I've made a mess of things, but you're the one person who really believed in me, Scott pleaded, his eyes glistening with sincerity that momentarily reminded me of the man I once loved. But those days were long gone, and my priority now was self-preservation, even if it meant walking away from him. Don't pull at my heartstrings, Scott. It's way too late for that. I thought you meant maybe $20,000, not $120,000. You've completely lost it, I replied, my voice a mixture of disbelief and indignation. Overwhelmed, Scott began to cry, seemingly oblivious to the uncomfortable glances from other patrons. Scott, calm down. This isn't the place for a scene, I said firmly. What's going to happen if you don't pay this back? They're threatening to harm me, Helen. I'm not joking. This is really bad, he managed between sobs, his words heavy in the air. I felt torn between my lingering concern for his well-being and the need to protect myself from being dragged back into his chaos. Seeing the seriousness of his situation forced me to consider the gravity of the risk he faced. I softened my approach. All right, Scott, start from the beginning and tell me everything, I urged gently. He recounted his attempts to fund an extravagant trip for his parents, explaining how he had borrowed money from a friend who ultimately let him down, plunging him deep into debt. As he narrated his missteps, frustration welled up inside me, mingled with reluctant amusement at the outcome. So, you borrowed money from risky people to impress your parents, who didn't even notice your efforts. Is that what happened? I asked, seeking clarity on the sequence of events. Scott's expression fell, and tears streamed down his face as he faced the painful truth. Yes, ever since they went on that trip, it's like I don't matter to them, he confessed, his voice laden with regret. Even though I was irritated, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. It was a harsh lesson, and seeing him so remorseful stirred a compassionate response within me. You've really gotten yourself into a tough spot, I remarked. I know you don't want to hear this, but you created this mess yourself. I warned you it wasn't a good idea. And now, after choosing to leave me over it, here you are struggling. You invested everything in trying to make your parents happy, but all you received in return was their indifference. It's a hard lesson, but it's one you needed to learn. I felt a mix of concern and resignation wash over me. This was a bitter truth for both of us. Scott had pegged his self-worth on people who couldn't appreciate his sacrifices, and I had to come to terms with the fact that I couldn't shield him from his own decisions. I hoped that confronting these tough consequences would help him realize that I had always been on his side, but his relentless quest for parental approval was his undoing. As we sat in silence, the weight of our shared past, filled with broken promises and unrealized dreams, was palpable. I realized it was time to completely let go. No more second chances, no more attempts to mend what was beyond repair. Scott needed to confront the outcomes of his actions on his own, and I needed to move forward and find my own path to happiness. I hope you find a way out of this, Scott, I said, my voice carrying a firm tone of finality. You're not going to help? Scott asked, genuinely surprised. No, I'm not, I replied. Why not? He pressed. Because I don't have the money to bail you out. And even if I did, taking on a huge loan that I'd be paying off for years isn't something I can afford. I can't afford to be as reckless as you've been, I explained, my tone steady and unwavering. Come on, Helen, please. I'm begging you, he pleaded, desperation palpable in his voice. Expecting me to fix this for you isn't realistic, I said, feeling my patience thin. Yeah, I did expect that. You're my ex-wife, not my enemy, he replied, still clinging to a shred of hope. but it was clear our lives had taken different paths. My focus now was on securing my peace and happiness, separate from the chaos that once intertwined our lives. And that's the problem, Scott. You expect me to always be there to clean up your mess because that's what I used to do. I was your wife, so helping you out of trouble was something I did naturally. But I can't and shouldn't keep doing that. It's not my responsibility anymore. After everything, I don't owe you anything, especially considering how our money was wasted on your ungrateful and toxic parents, I added. But I love them, Scott said, his voice softening. And I love myself too. Loving myself means doing what's best for me, including taking care of my well-being, I countered. Scott looked down, realizing he wasn't going to get the help he wanted from me. Understanding his bleak situation, I offered one last piece of advice. Since it seems like you're out of options, here's a suggestion. Leave. Move somewhere far away where they can't find you. I'm unsure what more you're asking of me, I said, my tone steady yet resolute as I faced him. He sat in silence, visibly upset by my decision to deny his request for help. It's time for us to part ways, Scott. I can no longer allow myself to be ensnared in your troubles, I explained, hoping he would grasp the gravity of my words. We each need to pursue our tranquility. His reply came with a hint of bitterness. You would help if you really cared, he argued, his voice laced with anger. I'm saying farewell, Scott. I'm also changing my phone number, I announced determinedly as I got to my feet. Walking away, I left him sitting alone, his face a complex blend of emotions. It was a hard yet crucial choice I had to make for my happiness and dignity.